So the next part we're going to talk about is technical training. And I like to label this how to fall, how to stop or command your dog, and how to laugh at yourself, because you're going to do a lot of laughing, especially those of you and us that do not see that well. So I'm going to show you a video that our neighbor's security camera picked up last winter. You will see my husband, who's an amazing skijorer, and then you'll see me going down the trail. And that's what I look like a lot of the time. So the point being is that we're all gonna fall, whether it's because we're not great on skis, whether it's because our dog sees a squirrel and there's just learning out how to work on the trail. We're gonna get bruised and battered, and that's part of the activity. And as long as you can laugh while it's happening or immediately after it happens, your dog is still gonna have fun. So the emotions that you have, so in the same way that the energy from your dog is transferring up the line to pull you down the trail, the energy and the emotions that you have are traveling down the line to your dog. So if you're getting frustrated and upset, your dog is going to start feeling that, and they're going to stop having fun. So Jeff King, who's this well-known musher in Alaska who runs Iditarod, has this saying where he's just like, you just got to pretend you're having fun. Whether you're having it or not does not matter. Those dogs need to believe that you are having the best time of your life, because then they're having the best time of their life. So if you are upset and sore and bruised, fake it. You want to make sure that your dog is having a really, really good time. And part of how we can control the chaos and make sure they're having a good time is learning how to fall well, learning how to stop and communicate our commands, and just being able to laugh at ourselves when mistakes happen. So this is a photo of my husband, Matt, with two of our really young dogs doing a skijor race in Anchorage. We did a lot of racing there. And you can see that he's got a huge smile, blurry smile on his face because they're going so fast. The dogs are having fun. It's looking awesome. And then this is me at the start line of that same race. And you're going to wonder, why, Jess, are you instructing a skijor course when everything you show us is you on your face? That's because I was a beginner at some point. I did not know how to ski when I hooked up my first dog to me, and it was a mistake. So learn from my lessons and learn how to ski before you ever hook your dog up to you, or just laugh a lot while you're doing it. So falling is an art. You have now seen two images of me supermaning down the trail. That is not the best way to fall. Falling on your butt and using your butt as a brake is a totally valid method to slow and stop your dogs. If you're an expert skier, maybe you have great edge control and you can slow and stop your dogs, or you might have a dog with great voice command who you just say whoa and they slow down and stop for you. That's awesome. But for a lot of us, we're somewhere in between. I don't have great edge control and my dogs are trained to pull no matter what. So finding that happy balance of dropping to your butt and using your body to slow yourself down is totally valid. So from a technical standpoint, learn how to fall so that you minimize your bruises, but you can also use it as a technique for slowing your dogs down. Another thing of that is learning line management, and we'll get into gear and what the lines actually look like. But you want to think about line management both at the start line, what you're expecting from your dog before you put your skis on, and then also during your run. And so in this photo here, you can see Matt with our dog Pliny, nice tight line. He's just full on skate skiing, having a great old time. Everyone's happy. It's about as smooth as it can get. Here you can see him in a race with Pliny and Polar Bear, and he's actually, oh, there, if you maybe can, you can't see my arrow, but you can see that he's actually holding on to the bungee line. And as you can see in the photo, you can kind of see he's on a downhill, and it looks like he's actually getting ready to pass a team. So by pulling in his line, he's able to have his arms to control some of that power from the dogs. He's shortening up how much of the line is in front of him. And so rather than getting pulled by the hips and being at the liberty of what the dogs are doing, he's actually able to gain more control by holding onto the line. And so I will often, when I'm going down the trail, and you again will see more video of me, I'll hold on to my line, especially when I'm starting down the trail, because you have a little more control. You're reducing the amount of stretch in that bungee, and it just kind of is a great way to get you started, or in a tricky situation, give you more control, and then you can work on letting the line out so that it's pulling you from the hips or the waist again. So during your run, think about line management, and do you need to rein them in to gain more control, or can you let them out to just kind of do your skiing thing and your dog's doing their thing and your guys are all pro? So at the start line, it's a little more nuanced. It depends on, what does your dog know? What have you trained them to do? What do you expect them to do? And so on the left here, you can see Matt with our dog Pliny. He was pretty young here, and Pliny has been taught ever since he was a little puppy to sit beside you when you ask him to, but also when you're putting on your skis. So if you're at a start line, he'll sit beside you while you're getting buckled in, and then you give him his release word, and he'll go and take you down the trail. You can see in this other photo, you can see our dog Polar Bear jumping like popcorn, and him and Cleo basically take turns jumping up in the air. They were not trained to sit but nicely beside you before taking off down the trail. They were trained to be excited and to go. So in this photo, you can see our buddy Ryan holding them back for Matt as he's getting ready to start the race. But if you don't have a friend there to help handle every single run that you do, there's a lot of ways that you can use mechanical assistance to tie your line off with a quick release so that your dogs are bouncing and doing whatever while you're getting your skis on, your poles together, and getting ready to go down the trail. The more you can reduce chaos, either through training your dog to do what's expected, or using other gear to minimize how much chaos, the more everyone's going to have fun, and you're going to start your run on a really good note, rather than getting all tied up and turned around and thrown around the place, and then finally making it onto the trail and getting down and being like, whoa, we barely made it here. So think about how, again, going back to what you're doing at home, how can you train your dog to be what you want them to be on the trail, whether that's sitting beside you or bouncing at the end of your line excited. Doesn't matter, it's up to your personal preference. But if they're bouncing at the end of the line, then think about what gear or material you need to make sure that even though they're excited, you can remain calm and get your skis on and get your gear together before you get going down the trail. So there are a lot of commands with mushing and running dogs in general. A lot of these come from horse commands. And I would say that this looks really overwhelming and you're like, how is my dog going to learn all of those things? But this is a beginner Skijor clinic. So I would say that really these are the commands we're going to cover. And when you look at that list, those are more intermediate, and the two that are going to be most important for you as a beginner going down the trail are let's go, or some sort of release word, so your dog knows it's time to start, and then whoa, which is how you're going to stop them. They know when it's time to end. And so we'll go into what do those commands mean and how do we train them? So the really big thing, and this goes back to what we've been talking about a lot, but does your dog understand what you're asking? So you can say jihad all you want, but if your dog has never heard those terms and hasn't practiced those terms off of the trail, then it's outrageous for us to expect them to know what they are on the trail. Even if they've practiced them in your living room, that doesn't necessarily mean that it translates onto the trail. So really, again, thinking about bridging that communication, doing the foundation and homework off the trail, whether that be on a leash walk, forest walk, in your living room, and then being able to contextualize it onto the trail. So the first thing to ask yourself is, if your dog isn't doing what you're asking, do they actually understand what you're asking in the context you're asking it? And then this is pretty counterintuitive, but what we notice working with dogs a lot is that quiet or silence is actually the most powerful command and reward. Sorry, I don't know if I've got a little dog party going on. They just came in from their walk. Quiet is the most powerful command and reward. So it's really common for people who are just getting started in dog sports to want to get on the trail and be like, yeah, let's go, up, let's go, you got it, you're doing it, you're good. That is the worst thing a dog. That's a lot. It's a lot. It's like if you're climbing up a rock wall and you have someone, your belayer is like, yeah, you got it. Put your foot there. Do this. Go. You got it. Go, go. It's overwhelming. So audially for the dog, they're taking in sights and sounds and smells and actions. So then to have that cacophony of additional audio as well is a lot. So the greatest gift we can give our dog is to be quiet. And that is a beautiful reward for them. They know when things are quiet that nothing is expected. The other part of that is that if you want your dog to listen to your commands, if you're constantly barraging them with voice, they're going to get overwhelmed and overstimulated from trying to listen for where the command is in what you're saying. And then they're going to tune you out. So that when you do give a command, they're not going to hear it because they've already checked out and said, I don't know what you're talking about back there, but I'm just going to go because I don't know what's happening. So if you want your dog to listen, make sure that what you're saying on the trail has meaning and is important to them. We all get excited. We want to be like, woohoo, you're doing it, great job. And there is a place for encouragement and for excitement. I would just say use it sparingly. And just make sure that what you're saying has value for your dog. A, that they understand it, but B, that it's required in that moment. So quiet. So the first command we'll talk about is a release word. Let's go. So if you remember that photo of Pliny sitting really nicely waiting to ski, as soon as we say let's go, he picks up and runs. So it doesn't have to be let's go. It could be hike. It could be okay. If you're in a Hollywood movie, it could be mush. Whatever word you want to use. If you have a release word you use in your daily training anyway, use that one. There is no right way to get your dog moving down the trail, but having a release word, especially if you're working on behaviors like sitting and waiting before you go, is an important key piece of that. And again, you can work on that on leash walks, in the trail, whatever, you can work on it outside of the trail. Two other commands that often get quite confused is whoa and easy. And they sound very similar and like they might mean the same thing, but they're actually very, very different. So whoa is the word we like to use when we want them to stop. So whoa means put on the brakes, we're all stopping. And the way that our dogs often learn this is by us adding friction. So we are slowing things down to a stop while saying whoa. And that's a way, and think about how you're saying things. Saying whoa, long and slow gives them idea that it's calm and you're stopping. So you're going to pair, and you can do this not on skis. You can do this with them hooked up and harnessed with you with your belt on foot. So you can say whoa and pull on the brakes, and then they can realize that that means stop. And eventually we work up to you say whoa and they stop without you putting on the brakes. And that's kind of the goal of that behavior. Some dogs never get there. They always need to feel that resistance to be able to stop. But they're kind of steps of what you can work towards. So whoa means stop. Easy is a little more intermediate and it means slow down. And so again, the way that we work on this is in harness off of skis. And we can say, especially going down steep hills, we can say easy and slow our pace and get the dog to slow their pace. But the ultimate goal of the most like pristine, perfectly trained dog, you say easy and they slow down on their own without having to feel that resistance. Again, that's not every dog is going to get there. I have many who don't. I have some that do. So working on communicating that, whether they need resistance or not, doing that work while you're out on working them with canicross or in your belt without skis, and then translating that also onto the trail. And a great way is, a lot of things with training is you can be really intentional with setting aside time to do training, or you can just implement it into your everyday walks and routine. So saying things like easy and applying that resistance, even when you're just out around the block doing your walk, is a great way to practice it and introduce it to their repertoire without, being like once a week we're out on skis and working on this one command that's very ski related. You can implement it into your day-to-day. The other commands, which again are a little more intermediate, because a lot of the times we're just going to go when we're first starting out, are your turns. So we use the term G to turn right and ha to turn left. And one of the great ways, again, to start practicing this is implementing it in your everyday walk. And so these sorts of things, your dog doesn't need to be, in harness hooked up to you on foot. They can be on their regular leash walk around town. When you walk out your front door, you might always turn right, but just start saying G when you do. And then the odd day, say ha and turn left out of your front door, and they'll start to pick up that differentiation. Our dog Pliny, when he was a little puppy, we did lots of free walking in the forest, and there were lots of splits in the trail. And so what I would do is we would just be walking and I would call G or ha. And in the beginning, it's 50-50 which way he went, but I would always go the way that I called. And after a couple weeks of doing it, he knew exactly. And still to this day, we go walking in the woods and I'll call G or ha, and he'll just turn on a dime and take the trail that I'm asking him to take. And so that's like the goal, is that your dog will turn whenever you tell them to, but a lot of that groundwork is laid during your leash walks, during your off-leash forest walks, before you actually put skis on you. So I think the goal here is that we can put a lot of these things into our day-to-day routine and the homework that we're doing off the trail, so that when we get on the trail, we're building in really small increments and we're not asking a whole bunch of new stuff all at once and expecting them to be skijoring rock stars. So the first few times you skijor, you might not use any commands other than let's go, and at the end, say whoa. And you'll slowly, as they get to know these other commands, build them into your repertoire. But again, we don't want to flood our dog with information. We want to use really tiny pieces to build up their successes. Dogs love to succeed. And I think you'll really find, if you don't do other sports with your dogs, this is the first sport you're doing with them, you'll very quickly see that the relationship you build working together is pretty amazing, and your dog loves to be given tasks and succeed at them. And it's really rewarding to see how happy they are when they are excelling at things. So build slowly and build it into your daily routine before you put it on the trail. The last thing I'm going to touch on, because I know some of you have puppies, or after you get into skijoring, you might be looking for a new sport puppy, is puppy training. We get asked a lot, is there an age that's too young? How young is too young to put a dog in harness? And I would say that it's never too young to start training your puppy. You're just not going to have them in harness at 8 weeks old. And so here on the left, you can see Jen and Matt and Michael and I were out for a ski with, I think these pups were maybe 3 or 4 months old, and we would take them out on these big skiing adventures. And they never saw a harness until they were probably about 6 months old. And basically the whole idea is that they're getting used to being on the trail, they're getting used to traveling in a direction, they're getting used to skis and poles, they're seeing adult dogs make G and ha turns, or stopping and going. So they're just being around the environment. So I would say for the first 6 months of a dog's life, it's about exposure. It's about giving them confidence, building confidence in the environment you're going to expect them to start playing in. And we've used the term work a lot this morning, but I think that's an easy way to say your dog's working in harness, but in reality, they're playing in harness. It's never really work for them. It should always be a really fun game. And so with puppies, giving them this kind of exposure and setting them up for success with never taking them on hikes that are too long, too far, giving them breaks when they need to, means that by the time they get into a harness, it's not a whole bunch of new stuff at once. The harness and pulling is just one tiny new thing in a very well-known environment to them already. So on the right, you can see puppy Pliny. I think he was about 4 months old here, sitting in harness. And here he's not pulling on this day, but around 4 months old, sometimes we'll put puppies in harness and then let them free run, go down the trail, just get them used to the gear, get them used to what they're going to be wearing. And again, like Michelle touched on, lots of rewards, lots of treats. You really want this to be a really positive experience for them. And we'll talk about gear, but making sure things fit and feel good is part of making sure that they're having a really happy, fun, and good time. So on the technical side of things, how young is too young? We like to say that about 6 months to a year is when you can start introducing pulling, harness pulling to your dog. But even then it's going to be, 1 mile. You might hike them out a mile up the trail and have them hooked up and run back to the vehicle. So it's very familiar. It's something that's easy for them. And I'm talking about this for puppies, but this is true for dogs new to the sport as well. Hiking out with them and having them pull home is often a really easy way to communicate what you want them to do. And so for puppies, 6 months to a year, you're going to do really, really light pulling for them. And a lot of people will say, you know, well, that's because their joints haven't closed yet or their growth plates aren't done yet. I would say that's part of it. You don't want really high impact sports on dogs, but pulling isn't a really high impact. I would say what I've seen with my experience is it's more of the mental game. And so it's really, young dogs are really excited. They're full of energy and they want to do stuff. And so it's really easy to see a young dog and say, well, they wanted to go 10 miles. They were still excited at the end of it, which is probably true for that one run. But as the more you push them, the more mentally tired they get. And what you might not see in 1 or 2 runs, them wearing down, but what you'll start seeing is that at year 3 or 4 of their life, you'll start to see that they don't pull as hard, that they're not as excited to get in harness, that their tug line isn't quite as tight. And and we call that mental burnout. And we see that quite a bit in puppies that are pushed too young, too hard, too fast at a really young age. So we're in it for the long game. This is about building an activity and a partnership that we can do with our dog for the duration of their life or for as long as they want to be running. And so by taking those measures to set them up for success and to be really positive and excited about things, leave them always wanting more really, really early on, is the way that we can really extend the life of this activity for our dogs. So technical training in a nutshell, I feel like I've covered a lot. In short, learn how to fall safely. Don't Superman like me. Learn how to fall on your butt, and you can use that as a stopping mechanism or technique. Learn how to communicate with your dog. Practice off trail. Start implementing it into your everyday life so that when you get on the trail, it's not something new that you're expecting of your dog. And then learn how to laugh at yourself. We're all going to make mistakes. It's never the dog's fault. It's always us, and we should be able to laugh about it and take time to fill not only our dog's fun bank, but our fun bank as well. I'm going to take I think we should all just take a quick couple-minute break. It does look like there's a question in here too. Why don't we all just take a minute to grab coffee, water, bathroom. I'll read through these questions. I'll answer them when we all get back. It's 10:05. Let's meet back at 10:10, and then we'll move into the gear section.
Perfect.
All right. Hopefully everyone got a quick break. Um, yeah, well, so we still have a couple of things to cover. We'll move through them, but it seems like everyone's doing well so far. So we'll keep moving it on. So Arvin had some great questions. A couple of them are gear or first aid related, which we will cover in this next section. But Jen, do you want to address his first question there?
Sure. So that's a great question.
Can you
and
repeat
a really
the question?
common
Sorry.
challenge. Oh yeah, sure. So the first question, which is the one I'm going to answer right now, the second and third questions we're going to hold off because we'll cover that in the presentation. Our first husky, Hendrix, has been doing canicross for over 2 years, and our recent rescue, Sedona, is still learning commands. So I still run them separately. However, I've noticed our girl learns faster when she runs or hikes with Hendrix. I'm wondering if you have any tips to transition into running together. I was thinking I can continue to do small canicross runs with both of them as I have more control. However, was curious for any advice on skijoring together. Both are around 4 years old. So you are doing exactly the right thing, and you're observing a really common phenomenon, which is dog-to-dog training is incredibly efficient and incredibly powerful. Dogs learn really well from each other. They speak the same language. They communicate in ways that we can't even begin to understand. And that's part of why it's so easy if you have a trained husky team to add one new dog in, and they learn really quickly from their buddies. I really like that you are starting them on canicross where you have a lot of control over the situation. And that the training between the dogs and the communication between the dogs can happen slowly and steadily, like we've been talking about. You can transition to bike drawing from canicross to add in a little bit more speed. You're really wise right now to be aware that Sedona, both mentally and physically, is not in the same place as Hendrix, who's been doing this for 2 years. And so letting Sedona, the newer dog, drive how short the runs need to be or how slow or fast they need to be so she stays in that fun zone. As far as transitioning to skijoring, once you're feeling really solid with canicross and or bike drawing, skijoring is going to be a pretty smooth transition. The one thing you can try if you find that Sedona is goofing off or maybe even distracting Hendrix running right next to him, is you can loop the tug line through her harness to be half as long as Hendrix's tug line and keep her just a little bit behind so she can follow and observe from behind if that is necessary. But if they're running well next to each other, it shouldn't be a problem. But every so often you'll have one dog who's a little goofier and more distracting who needs to just tuck in behind and watch and learn from the veteran without causing them to be distracted. So that's my 2 cents. Everybody's going to have slightly different takes. And again, a lot of it is based on the dog and the person. We're all individuals. So that's one way to approach it.
Yeah, thanks, Jen. That's awesome. And I will also say that video you saw of me supermaning down the trail, shortly after I go off screen, I was able to crawl up to my dogs to unhook one of them who then free ran while I reduced my power and continued down the trail with one dog. So if you have dogs with good recall, unhooking the unruly one might help because they can then watch your other one working and still participate, but not cause the distraction. And vice versa. You can keep your unruly one or your newer one hooked in and let your experienced dog run ahead because they're going to set a good pace and stay, do their job while you are hooked into the one that's still learning. So those are some options as well as just because you started down the trail with 2 dogs hooked up to you doesn't mean you need to finish or continue down the trail with 2 dogs hooked up to you.